Irreconcilable accounts of historical rights and wrongs are the foundation of the unresolved Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict. Following the Russian Empire's World War I era collapse, Armenia and Azerbaijan surfaced as short-lived independent states. Since centuries of imperial warfare over the strategic Armenian highland had diversified the region's ethnic makeup, newly independent Armenia and Azerbaijan held overlapping territorial claims. Soon after the Bolsheviks took power in the area, they rather shrewdly formalized two disputed regions, Nagorno-Karabakh and Nakhichevan, as autonomies within Soviet Azerbaijan. While Nagorno-Karabakh preserved a majority Armenian population, Nakhichevan's historical Armenian communities dwindled over the 20th century. The region's Armenian population shrunk following the 1921 treaties of Kars and Moscow, in which Turkish negotiators secured the disputed territories as an exclave under the administration of Soviet Azerbaijan. In 1988, Nagorno-Karabakh sought unification with Soviet Armenia. Leaving Azerbaijan was necessary, Nagorno-Karabakh's majority Armenian population claimed, to preserve the region's indigenous Christian past and to avoid the fate of Nakhichevan's vanished Armenian heritage. Nagorno-Karabakh became a war zone during the glasnost and perestroika of Mikhail Gorbachev. The conflict caused tens of thousands of deaths on both sides and many more displaced refugees, the majority of whom were Azerbaijanis from surrounding territories. Blackguard and author Thomas de Waal wrote, "After its defeat and suffering at the hands of the Armenians, Baku wanted to assert Azerbaijan's right to victimhood too. Evidently, Azerbaijan's narrative includes denial of the Armenian genocide, Armenian aggression, ethnic cleansing, the massacre in Khojali, occupation, and conspiracy by the Armenian diaspora." Since the 1994 ceasefire among then newly independent Armenia and Azerbaijan, mutual accusations of vandalism and revisionism have been rampant. Agam Ayvazyan was 17 when he started photographing the cultural heritage of his native Nakhichevan. From 1964 to 1987, he collected enough documentation to publish 200 articles and over 40 books. By the time the Berlin Wall fell, Ayvazyan had documented 89 Armenian churches, 5,840 ornate kashkars, and 22,000 horizontal tombstones, among other Armenian documents. Julfa was the last major Armenian site in Nakhichevan to be destroyed. Its 2005 to 2006 demolition was the grand finale of Azerbaijan's eradication of Nakhichevan's Armenian past. Azerbaijani officials now say that the Armenian monuments of Nakhichevan never existed at all, despite having previously labeled them erroneously as Caucasian Albanian in reference to a long extinct people. For more than 2,000 years, the indigenous Armenians of Agulis and the wider canton of Kokhtan, Azerbaijan's present-day Ordubad district, created a unique culture through centuries of survival, of which the existence was terminated in the past century. First during the First World War era Armenian genocide, then in a complete physical erasure of all cultural remnants. The successive Aliyev presidents, father and son Haydar and Ilham, along with their loyal relative and local enforcer Vasif Talibov, engaged in the covert destruction of Nakhichevan's entire indigenous Armenian Christian heritage. This included the aforementioned 89 churches, 5,840 cross stones, and more than 22,000 tombstones, an estimate based on independent researcher Agam Ayvazyan's documentation from 1964 to 1987. The Agulis massacre took place on the 24th to the 25th of December 1919, when Ottoman troops, aided by local Azerbaijani opportunists, brutally killed the entire Armenian community. The Agulis massacre formed part of Ottoman Turkey's 1915 to 1923 campaign known as the Armenian Genocide, in which an estimated 1.5 million Armenians perished, as well as many Assyrians, Pontic Greeks, and Yazidis. When Stone Dreams was published in 2012, it was apparently a nightmare for Azerbaijani dictator Ilham Aliyev. Quickly and overnight, a Lisli's standing in his country went from hero to villain. Aliyev revoked a Lisli's pension and title of People's Writer. His writings were erased from school curricula. He was banned from traveling. His family members were fired from their jobs. His books were publicly burned. Azerbaijan continues to deny Agulis' Armenian past and persecutes Aylisli for acknowledging and condemning its erasure. It also bans researchers from exploring the town. The president of Azerbaijan states that Armenians are not indigenous to Nagorno-Karabakh, which shows that Nagorno-Karabakh's Armenian sacred sites face a grave risk, not least because Azerbaijani officials continue to deny Nakhchivan's erasure by declaring that Armenians never existed there. Azerbaijan's destruction of Armenian monuments is an effort to neutralize Armenian historical rights in the region. It is part of a larger agenda of realizing a vision of pan-Turkism, an ethnically and religiously homogeneous Turkic polity comprising Turkey, Azerbaijan, and their ethno-linguistic brethren across Eurasia. As the late Armenian historian Edward Danielyan put it, Azerbaijan's monstrous crimes against medieval Armenian monuments are not a clash of civilizations or cultures, but a continuation of the 1915 genocide stemming from Pan-Turkism's anti-Armenian policies. During World War I, at the Battle of Sarikamish, the two declining empires of Ottoman Turkey and Tsarist Russia wrestled for control of historical Armenia, which had been divided between the two. But before the battle even started, tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers died by freezing, under-equipped by their leaders. The memory of Sarikamish lives on in official circles in Turkey and Azerbaijan alike. When Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan joined his brother Aliyev to celebrate Azerbaijan's victory over Armenians in a fall 2020 attack on Nagorno-Karabakh, Erdogan proudly proclaimed that today the soul of Enver Pasha, brave soldiers of the Caucasian Islamic Army, will rejoice. Today is a day of victory for the entire Turkic world. He was referring to the World War I era Ottoman war minister who provided Turkish support for establishing and expanding Azerbaijan, and who earlier was the blunderer-in-chief of Sarikamish. At bitter cold Sarikamish in late 1914, early 1915, Enver was thankful to Ottoman Armenian soldiers who gave their lives in vain to battle Russia. But when he returned to the Ottoman capital of Constantinople after that loss, instead of admitting his incompetence in improperly dressing and housing soldiers or attacking Russian troops in harsh winter conditions, Enver blamed his blunder on Armenians who had volunteered to join the Russian forces. The collective punishment that followed was not just an attempt at saving face. Enver dreamed of a racially pure polity of Turkic-speaking peoples, in which Armenians, whom he now called traitors, were the main hurdle. At a time when the Ottomans kept losing colonies, Armenians were the last and largest remaining Christian population in the region, an obstacle to creating a pure Turkey. Emptied Armenian homes and farmlands would also serve the urgent need of accommodation for Muslim refugees who had just fled the Balkans. In 1915, well over 1 million Armenians, the overwhelming majority of whom were loyal Ottoman citizens despite centuries of occupation, oppression, and overtaxation, were savagely erased from their ancient homeland in what is now eastern Turkey. The massacres spilled outside the Ottoman borders, including when, later in World War I, Enver's army of Islam reached Baku, the capital of current Azerbaijan. Enver's dream of physically connecting Turkey and Azerbaijan remains unrealized, but the idea lives on. In September of 2022, Aliyev's forces shelled dozens of towns in eastern Armenia and left evidence of numerous atrocities committed in the process of the invasion. The goal? A sovereign corridor splitting southern Armenia so that Turkey and Azerbaijan can have a continuous land border. Azerbaijan's attack didn't go unnoticed in Washington. In 2012, the European Stability Initiative called Azerbaijan's spending on lobbying as attempt to buy foreign allies and named it caviar diplomacy. These petrodollar-funded donations include cultural preservation grants of undisclosed sums to the Vatican. Baku's ability to court buy friendships has proven fruitful, with notable examples being a 2015 Time magazine op-ed describing Azerbaijan as an oasis of tolerance, and medals bestowed upon Azerbaijan's vice president, President Aliyev's wife, by the leaders of France, the Russian Orthodox Church, and even UNESCO the international organization charged with protecting World Heritage, which is ironic.